So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the 15 unique Zaps that we use inside of our company to automate everything from sales to service delivery. And these are going to be a little bit advanced Zaps, but don't worry, I'm going to break down each and every step and explain the thought process behind them. And so essentially, you can copy them inside of your own business and start making more money while saving time. So, without taking up any more of your time, we'll go ahead and dive into Zap number one. So Zap number one is our booked appointment automation. And essentially, this is what happens every time that a prospect either books a call with us or one of our sales reps schedules a follow-up call. So the trigger of the Zap, which is what triggers the automation, is whenever a event is created inside of Calendly. And then below this is what's called paths. So paths can also act as a filter, but essentially we've created path A, which is what happens with the automation if it's an introductory call, which is essentially the main and first call in our sales process. And then path B is if it's a follow-up call being scheduled, a second call, because we do default to one call closes, but obviously there's still some situations where follow-up calls will need to be booked. So essentially this also acts as a filter, whereas if it's not a introductory call or if it's not a follow-up call, then it's not, the automation is not going to continue because we don't want this automation being triggered every time someone books an onboarding call or a support call or an interview call, etc. So essentially path A is it goes down this path if it's a main sales call, okay? And so once it goes down this path, the first action is it actually sends the survey answers. So we ask about 5 to 6 questions, when someone books a call with us, and it sends those survey answers to ChatGPT. And the reason it does this is because we've created a grading system inside of our business for, survey applications for prospects who book a call with us. And, we've created this grading system out of 1 through 5, where 1 is unqualified, 2 is okay, 3 is good, 4 is best, and 5 is qualified, okay? And essentially, depending on how each person who books a call with us answers these questions, ChatGPT is going to grade them, and we've actually trained it through a prompt on, basically how to grade it based on each question, and then take the average of those questions and have one final grading point. So essentially, it's going to take the survey answers when someone books a call with us, send it to ChatGPT, and it's going to execute the grading prompt that we've created, and it's going to take those answers and it's going to spit out a grade. And then the next one is it's going to take that grading answer and format it so that we can store it inside of our database. So you can see right here, sometimes when ChatGPT spits out the grade, it will, say the application grade is X, and then it will tell us why, but we don't want it to look like that inside of our database. So the next step is ChatGPT takes the answer from the previous prompt and then formats it so it just shows the grade so we can store it inside of our database. And that leads me to the next step of the Zap is, it takes this person who booked a call with us and it stores it inside of our meetings database. So I'll actually go ahead and pull that up right now. You can see right here, this is our master database. We use it internally. We also give it to all of our clients. And the first tab is basically to keep a log of every single person who has booked a call with you. What happened? Did they no-show? Did they cancel? Did you end up closing the deal? We have another tab for payments. So tracking all payments that go through, also tracking revenue. We have another tab for expenses, so also tracking all the business expenses that are run through the business, and then KPIs, right? And the cool part about this automation is it's automatically storing a log and an entry for every single person who books a call with us, and that information is automatically going to be turned into basically an automated KPI tracker telling us how many appointments we booked each month, essentially based on these metrics right here. So it's good to have a log somewhere of every single person who has booked a call with you, and then also kind of track what ended up happening, did they close, did they not show up, etc. And it's really good for you to have this information, and it's also really good to have, you can see right here how the grading is actually stored inside of this database. So essentially every time someone books a call, If it's a main call, it's sending their application to ChatGPT to be graded. It's storing their name. It's storing who it was booked by, what platform it was booked by. It's automatically logging it as a main call or a follow-up call. It's putting their application grade right here. It's telling you when they booked the appointment on, when it's scheduled for, the prospect's email. And then, right here, we have other automations set up where if that prospect doesn't show up, it's automatically going to find them in here and mark them as a no-show. And it's also going to say who took the call. And this is really good data to be tracking, okay? And to kind of explain the grading system in more depth, if an application is graded a 1, which means they're unqualified, another automation is going to be triggered that automatically finds the meeting on my closer's calendar, cancels the meeting, sends them an email saying, hey, it's probably not the best time to be talking with us yet. However, here's some resources to kind of, so you can kind of start working towards that and maybe get on a call with us in the future. So, if the application gets graded a 1, we basically cancel the event and just send them some resources because it's really just going to take up my closer's time. It's going to take up a slot on the calendar. And it's probably not going to close anyways. And then if it's a 2, we'll probably just send it to one of our, our outbound setters, and they'll probably do more of like a 10-15 minute triage call instead of actually putting it as a main call on my closer's calendar. And then if the setter, if they take that triage call, which is more of like kind of a qualifying call, and if they find out that that lead actually is qualified, then they'll book in the call with the closer. So essentially, if the application grade comes back as a 1, it gets canceled. If it comes back as a 2, I don't give it to my closer because I want to save his, his time and energy for leads who, are a little bit more qualified. And then if it's a 3, a 4, or a 5, it does go through to my closer as normal. And also another benefit of tracking application quality with a legitimate and, standardized system is that, you can also make better marketing based decisions. So for example, a lot of people, they only track, for an ad campaign, they really only look at cost per appointment, cost per acquisition. And, your cost per appointment might look really good, but you also want to get, a good idea of what the average quality of those appointments is. And that's why you also want to be tracking, survey or application quality as a metric inside of your business so that you can also make better decisions at the marketing level. Same goes if you're using cold email. Your campaign might be booking a lot of calls, but you want to see, you want to be able to track the average quality of the meetings who came through cold email, and maybe you need to change your lead scraping strategy or targeting strategy. Okay, so that's why we also use the grading system. So essentially, after it grades the application, it adds them into the database. And then the next step is it's going to move the prospect into our sales pipeline automatically because, again, I want everything to be set up and everything that can be automated, I want it to happen automatically so that my closer, everything is just done for him and he doesn't have to, spend time and energy on these tedious tasks. So it automatically puts them into our sales pipeline. And then that way, if they're a no-show, he just goes straight into the CRM at the end of the day. The contact's already in there. He just drags them to no-show, and then that triggers a bunch of other automations. So again, we're really automating and making this a very efficient sales process. And then the next one is Slack. So this is going to be a very big recurring theme throughout this video. We literally send Slack alerts for every little event or thing that happens inside of our business. And really the reason for this is it gives me, because I'm not out there, taking calls or doing any of that stuff anymore. So one, it gives me a really good kind of thumb on the pulse of my business and what's happening on a daily basis. And then also, it's really good to have all these different events logged in one place. We basically have Slack channels for every little event. And then as well as, say for example, when a new client gets onboarded, it's good for us to see an alert when they fill out their onboarding form. And if there's anyone like a virtual assistant inside of the company who, when a new client gets onboarded, needs to get started setting something up like an ad campaign or a high level sub account, they know to do that when that Slack alert comes through. Okay. So pretty much everything inside of our company that's important, we're going to send a Slack alert for when it happens. So you can see right here, it's basically going to send, a message in our Slack channel. And essentially, what the star symbol means is it means that it makes that text bold. So it's basically just going to say new call booked. It's going to give us the name, email, application grade, and the questions of the prospect who booked a call. And then the other path is it goes down this path if the new event was a follow-up call. It's also going to add them to our database, but it's going to mark them as a follow-up call instead of a main call automatically. It's also going to send a Slack alert saying follow-up call booked. And my closer normally manually books the follow-up calls, but it's really good for me to see inside of Slack when he booked a follow-up call. Throughout the day when he's taking his calls, I'm able to see, oh, okay, he booked this prospect in for another call. That's potentially a good sign. And then we also have a log somewhere of all these different follow-up calls that's taken place. And then wherever the prospect is in the pipeline, so say for example, if they booked the main call, they would have been dragged into, the book call stage of the pipeline. Well, if the follow-up call gets triggered, it's going to move them from wherever they are in the sales pipeline to the follow-up call stage. So again, I want my CRM to be as automated as possible so that, my closer just goes in there. He doesn't even have to think about it, and he conserves his energy for the closing. So this is automation number one. This is what I mean when it's a little bit, unique. It's not typically what you see in a lot of the Zapier videos. So we'll move on to number two. So Zap number two, it obviously looks, pretty familiar to Zap number one. And this one is essentially the same thing, except the trigger is whenever someone cancels the meeting. Okay. So I'm sure if you've booked a lot of sales calls, you've experienced where a prospect, they go into Google Calendar and they cancel the meeting through Calendly. So essentially that's what triggers this automation. And again, there's two paths. The first one is if it's that main call, and then the second one is if it's a follow-up call that gets canceled. And essentially what it does is, the first one, so if a prospect cancels through Calendly, if they cancel the main sales call, it's automatically going to move them to the canceled stage of the pipeline. And then we have another trigger inside of Go High Level. Whenever someone gets moved to the canceled stage of the pipeline, it's automatically going to put them on this email follow-up sequence trying to get them to reschedule or rebook the call. And we're also, again, common theme throughout this video is going to be Slack alerts. So we're getting, an alert basically saying that this prospect canceled the meeting. And again, me, my closer, and my other team members, we spend pretty much all day in Slack. So my closer, he's going to know right away before anything else that, hey, this prospect canceled. And he doesn't have to end up planning to go to that call. And then it's actually going to find that prospect in the appointments book database that I showed you with Zap number one. And as you saw, there was the little check boxes for different events. It's actually going to automatically mark that prospect's meeting in the database as canceled. Okay, so again, this massive database is all pretty much fully automated, and so when a prospect closes, when a prospect cancels, when a prospect gets marked as no-show, it's automatically going to trigger these automations that update them inside of our database to ensure that it's accurate without us having to, if a prospect cancels, remember to go into the database and manually do it. It's just all happening by a robot, which is 100% reliable. And then the second one is basically the same thing, except it does this if it's a follow-up call. So, if it's a follow-up call and they cancel it, it will also still move them to the canceled stage of the pipeline so they can get put on that automation trying to rebook them. It will also send us a Slack notification saying that follow-up call is canceled. And then again, we also add follow-up calls to our database. So we'll essentially find the follow-up call inside of our master database and mark it as a no-show. So this is Zap 2. It's very similar to the first one, obviously, except the trigger is whenever someone automatically, or cancels the meeting through Calendly. So that's Zap number 2, and we'll go ahead and move on to number 3. So, automation number 3 is basically triggered. We do weekly calls with all of our clients. We have about 6 calls per month. We have 2 different types of calls. The first one is more kind of like a general support call. And then the second one is specifically for systems, operations, and automations, just like the ones I'm showing you in this video. And essentially, this Zap is to, whenever we have a new recording from the calls that we do with our clients, it's automatically going to upload that recording to a Google Drive, upload it as an unlisted video, and then send it to our virtual assistant so that they can post it inside of our school group. So if any of the clients want to rewatch the recording, they can. So essentially the trigger is whenever a new cloud recording happens inside of Zoom, which is where we host our weekly client calls. And again, there's 2 paths which also act as filters. So the first one is if the title of the recording is Lead Odyssey General Support Call. And then what it's going to do, it's going to format the Zoom start start date. And this is so that when we go to, upload the video, the date is formatted in a clean way. And if you're confused by this, basically, if you look at the zoom right here, basically it formats the date very weird. So Zapier will actually format dates for you. So if we want to use that date somewhere in a title in another step of the automation, we can format it so it looks a little bit cleaner and it's a little bit more organized. And then once it formats the date, it's going to upload that call to a Google Drive folder. So, we also want them all stored inside of a Google Drive for record keeping. But also what this does is it automatically formats the Zoom recording so that we can upload it as a YouTube video. And it's automatically going to upload that, call recording as an unlisted YouTube video on my channel. And then the next step is it's going to wait an hour. And that's normally how long it takes for the video to upload, or to the point where you can actually get a link from it. So the Zap essentially delays for an hour, and then it's going to send a message in our Slack channel, saying, so this is what it looks like right here. See how it formatted the date of the call. So it's automatically going to put the date of the support call, and then it's going to say general support call completed. It's going to give the YouTube URL to that unlisted video, and then it basically says please post to the school group classroom section. And then one of our VAs, whenever she sees this, she knows, okay, hey, just copy this URL, basically copy this as the title, and it will automatically show the date of that call. And then she posts it in our school group as a recording, right? So I'm hosting the calls. All I have to, and the calls automatically start recording. So, as soon as I end the call, all of this, it's just snap, 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 automated in the background. And then the only part that we can't automate is actually, uploading the video to school. So, if someone knows Sam Evans, please tell him to add more Zapier actions to school. But that's the only thing we can't automate. So instead we use, labor, and we have our virtual assistant. And this is where having Slack notifications becomes very useful, because you can use it for certain kind of alerts if you need certain people in your company to do something. So, our VA knows whenever that alert goes through, the upload is complete. All she has to do is copy the URL, copy the title. She's an admin in our school group, and she'll just go ahead and post it, and it's there for all of our clients to review. And then the second path is basically the same thing, except it only goes down this path when the call recording title matches Lead Odyssey Systems Call, and then it basically does the same thing, except it sends the Slack channel message, and it's, instead of saying general call, it says the date of the call and then systems call complete. So for example, it might say 7-03-23 systems call complete, and then all our VA has to do is copy this and upload it to the systems call recording section of our school group. So this is app number 3, super cool. Otherwise, I would have to do this completely manual. So it's really nice. Don't even have to think about it. And we'll go ahead and move on to Zap 4. So Zap number 4 is our growth specialist outreach accountability automation. And essentially what this does is it keeps the growth specialists inside of our company accountable to hitting their KPIs each and every day, or 6 days of the week. And essentially what a growth specialist is it's really just a fancy word for an outbound appointment setter. So, someone inside of your business who is, sending outbound messages on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. to book meetings for your business. And essentially what this automation does is it holds them accountable. So it's actually going to run every single day at 5 p.m. And so every day at 5 p.m., this Zap is automatically getting triggered. Step number 2 is it's going to go into the spreadsheet that one of our growth specialists use, and it's going to see what numbers they hit that day. So the second step is it's going to see how many new leads were contacted today. Step 2 is it's going to see how many leads were followed up with today. So for example, we've created this tab in all of our tracking sheets, and we've used, a couple of these formulas where they basically use this, they use the tracking tab as a CRM, and, as they enter new people into the tracking, and as they mark people as, follow up 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, it's going to automatically at the end of for today's date. So we set a formula for each date. It automatically puts it there. And then, through some of these formulas, it's going to automatically each day put here how many new DMs they sent and how many follow-ups they sent. And the reason for that is because at the end of each day at 5 p.m., we can pull this information through Zapier and send it in our company Slack channel. So that's exactly what it does. It finds out how many new leads were contacted, finds out how many follow-ups were sent, and then it's going to send a message inside of our Slack channel. And again, so at the end of the day, everyone inside of our company can see exactly how many messages they sent, which just kind of helps hold them accountable, right? And it gives them a little bit more of an internal motivation to hit their numbers by 5 p.m. each day. So this is really good. It holds them accountable. You can also use this for virtual assistants. That's why we put these tabs in, all of our clients. We give them pre-trained virtual assistants, and we actually set up all those VAs with this tracking sheet so that they can hold their VAs accountable each and every day and have that alert go off in their Slack channels as well. And essentially the next steps is it just goes to another spreadsheet, from basically a virtual assistant, sees how many new messages she contacted, sees how many follow-ups she did, and then it basically sends it sends another alert in the Slack channel. So, basically you can keep doing this for however many VAs or growth specialists that you have on your team. And this is really good. And it's something that's really small, but I promise you, just them knowing that the exact amount of outreach that they did is going to be shown to everyone at the end of the day. It's just kind of this external motivation that kind of, really encourages them to hit those numbers every day or every day that they're working by the end of the day. So that's Zap number 4, pretty cool. This one's a little more simple. So we'll go ahead and move on to Zap number 5. So Zap number 5 right now, this might look like a super simple Zap, but this is actually one of the most valuable automations inside of our Zapier account, and I'll tell you why in a second. So this is our Zap failure internal notification. So the trigger is actually whenever there's an error with any of our automations, which we have a lot of them, and that's what you're going to see throughout this video. Whenever there's an error in any of those automation steps, it's going to trigger this automation right here. And then what it's going to do is it's going to send an alert in the request desk channel of our Slack. And it's basically going to say, failed Zap alert. It's going to tell us which Zap failed. It's going to give us the failure message, and it's going to give us a direct link to that specific Zap so we can go in to fix it. Now, this might not seem like, this is very important, but I promise you, I'll actually tell you a story right now. So we use Zapier for, we basically have an in-house recruitment agency to recruit virtual assistants for our clients, EliteVA.io. And essentially, everything in EliteVA is essentially automated through Zapier. And, we didn't have this internal failure Zap set up back when we first started EliteVA. And one of our Zaps failed, and we had no way of knowing it. And actually, applications kept going through, and we didn't know that this one Zap wasn't working the way that it was supposed to. And it just caused this whole issue that literally took 2 whole days to fix. And that wouldn't have happened if we would have had this automation here back then. And since then, this automation has saved us a ton of hours of time by, giving us an alert whenever a Zap fails so we can immediately fix it. And there's actually a third step in this Zap, and it's essentially to create and assign a task inside of Asana. So this brings us into, the 3 tools that, these are the 3 tools to rule them all. And, these 3 tools, if you have these 3 tools, you're going to be able to really run an efficient, agency, company, whatever, is Slack for internal communications and alerts and client communication, Asana for project management, and then Zapier to connect everything together, okay? So Asana is our internal project management. This is how, we track what we're doing each month inside of our company, who has to do what. Also, this is how we track our project management for our clients. So you'll see later, every time we close a new client, a project is created for them. And this is how we track all the tasks that need to get done for that client in order to deliver them an amazing service and not let anything slip through the cracks. So a task is going to be created inside of Asana to fix the Zap that failed. And then this way, not only do we get an alert, but a task is going to be put inside of our Asana, and it's going to be assigned to the person inside of our business who's in charge of fixing it. And then that way, not only does he get an alert, but he can also keep track of whether he's actually fixed it or not, right? Because he might be doing something else. He gets the alert. He's like, oh, I need to fix that. And then, even if he forgets a day later when he opens up Asana, he's going to see that he still has a task to fix this Zap. And then if he does get the alert and he fixes it right away, he can just check this off. And then that way, we never forget about fixing a Zap whenever it does fail. So this Zap right here, it's very small, it's very simple, but it can save you a ton of time, and it would have saved us literally 2 entire work days, which becomes very valuable over time. So it might seem small, but it's very essential. Trust me, you do not want to not have this Zap. So Zap number 6, again, super simple but very essential, and this is our end of day closer form alert. And now what this is essentially a form that I have my closer fill out at the end of every single day to hold them accountable, but also for me to see what happened on each and every single call and make sure that my salesperson is managing their energy properly, as well as basically doing all the pipeline management and leading indicator activities that they need to do to make sure that their projections are hit for that week. So basically this Zap is triggered every single time that form is filled out. So to show you what this form looks like, and this isn't going to be a sales management video, but if you are ramping up a closer right now, you will get some value out of this part. So essentially this is our end of day closer report. So my closer puts his full name just so we can keep, if we we do end up hiring multiple closers later, we can kind of keep track. He's going to put the total amount of revenue he generated for the day, total cash collected, how many calls he booked. So we also have our, closers also do a little bit of prospecting to fill their own calendar on top of what we give them. So this could be from outreach, 2-steps, reoffers, group joins, etc. He's also going to put how many total live calls he took that day, how many total offers were given, how many total clients he closed, how many posits he collected, and then also, so right here, he's going to list out all the live calls he took that day, what happened, what was great, what could be improved, and he's also going to put right here their name, what their main objection was if they had one. If he closed them on a payment plan, he's going to put that there, and then also, they're basically the next steps, right? So what are the next steps in terms of that sale? And he's also going to fill in all of the details that are up here. So what happened, what was great, and what could be improved. Now this way, not only can I see each and every day what happened on each call that we booked, but also it gives him kind of a good feedback loop where it really causes him to, sit down, think about what happened, what was great, and what could be improved. And this is just a really good exercise to be doing after every call. And then the next one is he's going to list his leading indicator activities, which is essentially the lead gen that he is doing, and if he's on track to hit his hedge. So again, this is like to go into leading and lagging indicator activities is going to be a whole nother video, but essentially leading indicator activities are the activities that he can take today to make sure that his projections are hit by the end of the week. Okay. So essentially, he could have made a 2-step post, comment this and get this resource to book more calls for that week. Well, he would put that here, or maybe he's calling old leads who didn't show up to the call, and he's just going through his CRM and calling them all up. He could put that as an activity too, how much time he spent on it, what the results were, and again, so on our morning sales meeting every day, because I meet with my closer every single morning, to basically you need meeting, in terms of meetings, if you have a closer, you need to be meeting with them every day. Okay, people are like, oh, I don't need to do meetings. If you have a closer and you're not meeting with them every day, your closer is not going to perform anywhere near where they could. But essentially on these morning meetings, I have my closer list out where he's at in terms of his projections and what he needs to do today to ensure that those projections get hit. And then that way, at the end of the day, he's going to put here what he did. And again, this creates an accountability system where, we can see, he has to write down if he did what he said he was going to do that morning. And then the next ones, we have our closers rate their energy on 1 through 10 in terms of physiology, clarity, necessity, and inspiration. And this helps us kind of identify if our closers are about to go into a rut or a losing streak. And it holds them accountable to manage their energy across 4 different areas. Again, don't worry if this is confusing. It's a whole nother video for a whole nother day. And I got all my sales management from Cole Gordon. So if you want to learn more about that, you can definitely go check him out. And then the next question is, did I honor the promises to myself? So if a closer is telling themselves that they're going to do something and they don't do it, they're lying to themselves, and now they're going to bleed. They're not going to be able to transfer trust to the prospect if they can't even trust themselves. Okay. So we want to make sure that our closers are keeping the promises to themselves every single day. And then I make him basically say yes if he updated his CRM that day. And the reason for this is because if he hasn't, now he's going to be given a reminder to go back to the CRM, update it, and then come back. And then same with the tracking sheet. So, we basically have a master closer tracker sheet that we use. And, if he hasn't updated it for the end of the day, then he's going to have to go back, do that, mark yes. So, I probably just went on too much of a tangent kind of showing this form, but, little hidden value in there if you're training a sales guy right now. But whenever he fills that form out at the end of the day, it's going to trigger this automation here, and it's basically going to format the date that the form was submitted. And essentially the reason we do that is so that the next step is sending a Slack alert, and it's automatically going to show the date that the form was submitted, because basically whenever the form gets submitted by default, the date again is super unorganized, so it's basically just going to format the date so that we can clearly see when this entry was made inside of our Slack channel. So we have a Slack channel. Inside of our our workspace, basically called Alerts Closer End of Day. So every single day in the Slack channel for all of our company to see, we're going to be able to see his answers to that form, and that's essentially going to help him, kind of stay accountable to what he needs to get done each day in terms of sales. So that's number 6. Again, a super crucial automation, super simple, but super crucial at the same time. So Zap number 7 is our failed payment automation. Now, kind of the importance of having Zaps like the one I'm about to show you is all these different events that happen inside of your business. So for example, one of your clients who's on a subscription through Stripe, maybe one of their payments failed, right? You need to have systems and, basically procedures and automations for when different events like this happen, because without them, you're going to be really unorganized. Things are going to be all over the place. Most agency owners, if one of their customers' payments fail, they have no idea that it happened. They don't have any system to keep track of it. They don't have any system to have their customer update their card or get in contact with them, etc. And that's really what this automation solves. So it's going to be triggered every time there is a new failed payment inside of our Stripe system. So any customers who are on a subscription, or if we're closing, or if we're about to close a client and their payment doesn't go through, we're going to get sent an alert in the failed payment Slack channel. So basically we know right away that a payment was failed, and then it's only going to, and then, so this is basically the first 2 steps, and then the Zap is only going to continue on to the next steps if this payment is if it isn't the first invoice. So essentially, if it's a client who's on a reoccurring subscription, all these other steps will be triggered. But if it's a new client, we still get the Slack alert. So every failed payment, we get sent a Slack alert, but these rest of these steps won't get triggered unless that's a client who's at least paying their second equal or greater to their second payment inside of our system. So hopefully that makes sense. And then it's going to find their subscription inside of Stripe. And then it's going to format the customer's name. And the reason it does this is it takes their full name and it breaks it down into their first and last name, so that when we send them the email in the next step, it only has their first name. To show you an example of this, and then the next step is sending them an email through Gmail. So the subject line says action required, failed payment of, it's automatically going to put the amount, and then basically here it's going to say hey, and then it's automatically just going to put their first name, and that's why we formatted it so it doesn't say hey Jackson Williams, and it just says hey Jackson. And then these P's right here, this basically just means it makes that text normal. If you just write a regular email on here, it will be sent with a really weird format. So you basically have to add these P brackets to just make it be normal text. So if you're wondering what that is, that's what it is. And then it says, hope this message finds you well. We just attempted to charge your payment of, it automatically puts the amount on. And then the reason we find the subscription is so that it can pool their default payment method. And in this email, it can show them which payment method failed. And then it's going to say, however, it came back as failed. We understand errors and things come up, and maybe you need to update your card or speak with us. In order to prevent interruption of any services, please update your payment method here. And then we set up a custom customer portal billing portal in Stripe. So I'll go ahead and show you what this looks like. It's essentially, it leads them to a link that's attached to our system, and basically all they have to do is put the email that they use to sign up with us through Stripe, and it's automatically going to take them to a portal where they can update the card on file. So it's going to put them there, and then we basically said, once updated, we will charge the difference. If you need to talk with us, please simply respond back to this email or message us in your private Slack channel. And then we say, failure to respond within 3 to 5 business days will result in removal of access to any assets, your Slack channel, community, and the program. Thanks, Lead Aussie team, right? So now every time, and then the next step is it formats the date. And then in that master tracker, also where we store the appointments, we also have a tab for tracking payments. So the next step is it's basically going to create a log of that failed payment inside of our payments database so that we can have a record of literally everything happening inside of the business. And now every time there's a failed payment, we're going to know about it right away. The customer is going to be sent an email with a link to update their card, or basically telling them, what they need to do, if they need to talk with us, etc. And now, everything's automated, and we have this system for when failed payments happen, because they will happen when you're working with a lot of different clients. So Zap number 8 is our client gift sending automation. And essentially what this does is it will be triggered every time a new onboarding form submission occurs in Jotform. So that's where our onboarding form is hosted, and that's where all of our clients will add their address. And then essentially the Zap will be delayed by 4 weeks. So it gets triggered every time we get a new onboarding form, but it's delayed by 4 weeks. And the reason we do this is we don't send our clients a gift until we're sure that they're there to stay, right? So we wait 4 weeks, and if they are with us for that second month, then we'll go ahead and continue this automation. So next, what it's going to do, it's going to format the client's address. So by default, the onboarding form in Jotform, it sends the address into Zapier in kind of a weird format. So we use the formatter step of the automation to format it so we can neatly see it. And then basically the next step is it's going to send an alert inside of our Slack channel, and it's essentially going to say time to send, and then the client's name, a gift. It's going to put their full address, and it's also going to put the client's main goal, because we basically in the gift, we send them a custom note and we refer to their goal. And then right here, basically there's an emoji pointing right here, and what this bracket means right here is this is essentially hyperlinking something. So the link is a link to a gift sending SOP, and then what it shows up as in Slack is it just says click here for gift sending SOP. And then when you click on it, it takes you to this SOP that we have right here. And now every time this automation fires off, it not only sends an alert that a gift needs to be sent, but it's also, linking the SOP. So all our virtual assistant has to do is click on the SOP. They can go through the guide right here. They can watch a video of it. And again, everything is systematized where, as soon as that gift is ready to be sent, automatically, without us doing anything, an alert gets sent out with the SOP for completing, the gift sending process. So again, instead of our VA having to go to us, hey, how do I send the gifts, and, stop us from whatever we're doing, she's automatically being sent the SOP to do it, which explains exactly how to do it, as well as it's attached to a video. And, now, she doesn't have to, message us back and forth, hey, can I get the login for this? Hey, can I do that and this? And now everything is running more efficiently in the background, okay? And then the next step is it's going to find that client's project inside of Asana, and it's actually going to create a task to send a gift to the client that project is assigned to. So essentially what it's going to do is we create a project for every single client. Once this automation gets triggered at this point in time, right after the Slack alert is sent, it's going to find that client's project inside of our Asana project management system, and it's going to create a task under that client's project to send them a gift. And the reason we do this instead of including it in the project by default is so that it creates a new task and it pops up at the top of the system, and it's due that day. And this way, again, so not only are we sending a Slack alert so that our VA knows to do it, not only are we including an SOP so she has everything she needs without asking us, but there's also a task being created, and then that way in the SOP it tells her once she's finished she need to check it off, and then this way if the alert goes through and she's doing something else, she doesn't forget about it, and that way when she logs into Asana, she's also going to see that she's assigned that task to send send the gift, and then once she's completed it, she can check it off, right? And you might be thinking that this is unnecessary, but I promise you, once you start working with a lot of clients, once your team grows, you need a project management system so you can assign tasks automatically, and those tasks can be tracked of when they're completed and when they're outstanding. And this is how you manage a lot of clients at scale. So this is essentially our gift sending automation, and we'll move on to step number 9. So automation number 9 is our new team member onboarding automation. And essentially what this does is, when you're onboarding a new team member, there's a various list of tasks that you need to complete. And sometimes these tasks can be tedious and take up a lot of time, but they need to get done. And, anything that we can automate, we want to automate it so that this is another thing that now we don't have to spend time doing. And the more of these little tasks that you automate, the more and more time is going to be freed up, and the more time you have to spend on, higher leverage activities. So essentially, all the steps that are needed when you onboard a new team member, those are essentially going to be completed here. So, the first one, the trigger of this Zap is, whenever we hire a new team member, we give them a form to fill out. And it's the same form for every team member. And there's going to be one option where they can, we've added a bunch of preset roles. So virtual assistant, closer, growth specialist, service delivery, cold email department, etc. And then all they have to do is select that pre-selected option, and it's going to give us the data of where they are in the company. So every time that we hire someone, we basically first thing we do is we send them this form, and once they've completed it, it's going to trigger this series of events. So the first one is we have our company home inside of Notion, which is where we store a lot of different SOPs, and we also inside of there have an employee database, where everyone can see everyone on the team, what they're in charge of, what their email is in case they wanted to contact someone, or when a new employee comes on, they can go to that hub and they can get familiar with everyone on our team. So it's essentially going to add them to that company hub with their contact information, what position they're in, what their duties are, so everyone else on the team can see this new employee as well inside of that database. And then next, what it's going to do is it's going to create an employee contract in PandaDocs. And remember how I told you that we have a pre-selected series of options on the different job titles, and depending on what job title it's going to create a different contract. So if we're hiring a new closer, they would have put that they're a closer on the team member onboarding form. Well, when it gets to this step, it's automatically going to create a template of the closer form, and it's automatically going to basically send it to them. And then the next one is it's going to create a non-disclosure agreement and send that to them as well. And it's something that it's kind of unfortunate that we have to do it, but it is best practices, and all the biggest and best agencies are doing it. Essentially what it is if this team member, if everything goes south and they stop working with us, or we just part our ways on good terms, it means that they can't go to another business and basically tell them everything that we have set up and all of our trade secrets, right? So it is good to get in the habit of having all your employees fill out an NDA, because you'll hear very bad stories of these big companies or even medium-sized agencies that hired a team member, and that team member stopped working with them, and then they went to another agency and they gave away all that company's secrets. So you do this to kind of create discouragement for that happening, and so it's automatically going to create a template for a contract depending on what role they're in, send that contract to them, then it's automatically going to create an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, and it's automatically going to send that to them. And then it's going to assign a task to our virtual assistant inside of Slack to invite that team member to our Slack. It's going to create a task inside of Asana, which is our team's project management system, to basically a task to invite that team member. It's automatically going to give their email inside of the task too. So all our virtual assistant has to do is when they log into Asana that morning, they'll see, hey, I have to invite this name and this email with this role into our Slack channel. And again, this is so you can't automate inviting someone outside of your Slack channel to your workspace. So basically we use, this is a task that we assign to our virtual assistant. And basically, every time that, this automation is triggered, she's going to get assigned a task inside of Asana. So when she logs in, she knows that she has to do that. And now this is happening without us having to think about it. And she's also going to have an SOP for doing that inside of the Slack task automatically. So again, she doesn't have to see that task and then ask one of us how to do it and, interrupt us from maybe working on something else, right? So that's why you kind of document and create SOPs for everything. And then the next step is it's automatically going to create a user inside of Google Workspace. So, whenever you hire a new employee, you need to create them a company email. And most people are doing this manually, but now it's a step in this series of automations. So they're automatically being created a user, and they will have put all their information, their current email, their first name, their last name. They will have already put that on the onboarding form. So, we can basically carry that straight over to Google Workspace. All the employee has to do is fill out that form. All of these steps are being triggered automatically. So they're automatically being basically creating a user. So say their name is John, they will automatically be created an email called john@leadodyssey.io, and they will automatically be sent the login instructions to basically log into that new company email. And then the next step is it sends them an email with basically important links. So it's basically going to take all of these things here and send them an email along with some other important, bits and pieces of info. So it's basically going to automatically create the contract, and the contract that was created will automatically be sent to them through PandaDocs, but we also include a link to it in this email. So we include a link to basically the Notion Hub. We also include a link to their contract, also include a link to the NDA, also give them their login instructions for Google Workspace, and then we also give them a link to the Slack channel, which they'll manually be added to either way. But we just send them all those links, basically a welcome message as well, and all of this is automatically done. And then there's a filter, and basically this eighth step of this automation is it's only going to continue if the team member's role is a virtual assistant. So if we hired a virtual assistant, when we give them the same onboarding form we give to all our employees, they would have selected from the pre-selected roles that they're a virtual assistant. And if that happens, they would be added to this ninth step, which it will basically automatically create a person in Jibble and send them an invite to our Jibble. And if you don't know what Jibble is, it's basically what you use to track the time that your virtual assistants are working, so that you can pay them properly and automate some of the payouts. So essentially, if they are, when they fill out the onboarding form, if they're a VA, it's automatically as the ninth step going to invite them to Jibble so we can track their time. And again, we don't have to do this manually. Now, all these things most people are doing, and all these things combined are going to take like adding them to the company hub, creating a contract, creating an NDA, adding them to the Slack workspace, creating a user for them, sending them an email with important links, adding them to Jibble. Doing all those manually is going to take a ton of time. So basically all you do is you create one centralized onboarding form and you create that a trigger, and now all these things are happening automatically without you even needing to think about it. So automation number 10 is our no-shows automation. And remember earlier I showed you that every time someone books a call with us, they're automatically being added to our Go High Level sales pipeline. And at the end of the day, and you will have saw in the closer end of day form that I'm asking my closer, did you update the CRM today? So essentially the leads that book a call automatically get put in a CRM, and at the end of the day, he's moving them to the different pipeline stages depending on what happened, and also adding notes in. And anyone who didn't show up that day, he's going to drag them from appointment book stage to no-show stage, and then that's what's going to trigger this automation. But we also have another trigger inside of Go High Level. When someone gets dragged here, they're put on this email sequence trying to get them to rebook a call. But also it's the trigger for this Zap here as well. And then the first step is it's going to find that prospect's meeting in our master database, and it's going to mark them as a no-show. So again, all this tracking is happening, and this database is being updated real time without us having to go in there each day. And then it's also going to send a Slack alert, and it's essentially going to say, meeting no-show, so that I can know that, hey, this person didn't show today. It's going to give their first name, their last name, their email, their phone number, but it's also going to hyperlink an SOP for calling people who didn't show up to the call. So I'll actually show you what this looks like, and I'll actually pull up So you can see, right here, here's our Slack channel, and we have this channel right here for booked meetings. So right here you can basically see the automation going off real time when someone books a call with us. But you can see right here, whenever someone gets dragged to no-show, it sends us an alert here, and it's going to put their name, their email, their phone number, but it's going to hyperlink a script. So if we click on this script, it's basically a script for calling people who don't show up to the appointment, and it gives my closer everything he needs to be able to do that completely on his own. And it's a funny story. We've actually had people who didn't show up to a call. We called them using this script, and they actually ended up closing later on. So screw it, I might as well just show you this. If you want to steal it, go ahead. It works extremely well, and you can basically use it every time someone doesn't show up to a sales call. You can ring them up 2 times and use this script to basically book them in for another time. So basically he's automatically going to be, sent that in the Slack channel, and then I can also see, hey, this meeting was a no-show. And then step number 5 is basically a delay, and it's actually going to delay the automation by a week. So it's going to delay after it sends the alert. The automation won't be continued for 7 days. And on the 7th day, it's going to continue, and it's going to search Google Calendar. So it's going to search my closer's Google Calendar, and it's going to see if a follow-up event has been created, and there's basically a timeline. So it's going to see if a follow-up has been created in the past 7 days, but it's also going to see if a follow-up event has been scheduled for the next 7 days. So now it's basically searching to see if a follow-up call has been booked with that prospect, either from 1, the automated email follow-up sequence that gets triggered and go high level, or 2, the closer script or the calling script that gets sent straight to my closer through Slack, and it's going to search Google Calendar after a week to see if that prospect ended up booking a follow-up call. And if they didn't end up booking a follow-up call, it's going to create a task inside of our CRM to follow up with that prospect again. And then it's also going to send a Slack alert in our pipeline management channel saying new pipeline management task. And you can see right here, it's creating a task in our CRM. So think of it this way, right? You have Asana, which is the project management you use for internal projects, managing your clients' projects. And then you have your CRM, which is also going to be your task management system for your closers or for yourself in terms of sales related tasks. Basically, if the person didn't end up booking another call after a week, it automatically searches to tell. And if they didn't, it creates a task inside of our CRM saying reach out to, and then that prospect's name. And it will basically, it'll give a description too, explaining how they can reach back out to them to try to book them, to book another call. And then it sends a alert in the Slack channel, basically with the name of that task in the CRM, with the description, and then which closer it's assigned to, and it tells them to mark as complete in CRM when finished. Now, the reason we do this and the reason, we put so much effort into trying to get no-shows to book is because if someone books a call, they watch the content, etc., they've already gone through the majority of the sales process. All they have to do is get on the call. So if someone doesn't show up, we've already brought them 80% of the way. So essentially, they're the lowest hanging fruit that we can go for, try to get them back on that call. And it's going to be it's going to be a very low effort deal to close simply by following up with every single person who is a no-show. So essentially, to sum it up, at the end of the day, my closers, all he has to do is drag the lead to no-show. It's automatically going to update that lead as no-show in the database. It's going to send me an alert and everyone else on our team in the Slack channel saying, hey, this person didn't show up. It's going to give us a script to go ahead and call them and try to get them back on the call. And then it's going to wait a week. It's going to see if that follow-up call is booked, either through calling them or the email sequence that automatically goes out in high level. And only if they didn't book another call, then it's going to create a new task to basically follow up with them and send an alert with that task description inside of our Slack channel. So Zap number 11, we have our sales call recording. And this Zap is one of my personal favorites because it's very different to how most people are going about automating their sales calls recordings, because we don't record our sales calls on Zoom. And we've basically found a workaround for still automating the process, and I think it's very cool, and this really shows you the real power of Zapier. So essentially, we don't record our sales calls on Zoom, and we advise all our clients not to either. Now, the reason for this is because every time you go to record a call on Zoom, it makes this very loud and obnoxious noise saying meeting being recorded, and it also also has a pop-up on the prospect screen saying, do you consent to this meeting being recorded? And they have to press OK. Now, a lot of prospects might not care, but for some of them, it kind of throws them off. It's this pattern interrupt. It makes them kind of uneasy, and it just creates resistance, right? It makes them feel like they're on a sales call because it tells them it's being recorded. So we actually use an external software called OBS to record the calls without that alert popping up. And we've basically set it up through OBS. We downloaded the Google Drive desktop app, and what that does is it basically allows you to choose the export location of the recordings in OBS as a Google Drive folder, and then every time my closer takes a sales call, all he does is click start recording on OBS before the call, and then when he finishes, he presses stop recording, and it automatically saves that to a shared Google Drive folder that we have, and then now he can record his sales calls without the prospect being alerted, but we can also use that new Google Drive file as a trigger for our Zaps. So we basically found a workaround for not having that notification and sound happen, but also still being able to use it in automations like you could a new Zoom recording. So essentially, the trigger of this Zap is when a new sales call recording gets uploaded to that drive, and it triggers the Zap. The next step is, so basically whenever a meeting gets recorded inside of OBS, it automatically names the recording, the date, and then the time in a really weird format. And Zapier's in-house formatter was having a lot of trouble formatting it cleanly. So we basically send the title of the sales call recording to ChatGPT, and we have ChatGPT format it so it only puts the date and the exact time that the sales call started. And then basically the next step is Google Calendar uses that date and time that the sales call started, and it searches Google Calendar for it basically searches my closer's calendar for the event that is closest to the start date time as the recording that was uploaded. And then what it does is this and the reason we do this is because otherwise the file would just be uploaded to a drive, and the name of it would just be a date and time, which is obviously super messy. When we're going through the drive, we don't know which video was from which prospect, and it gets really disorganized and messy very fast. So we basically found a way to automatically retitle it the prospect's name. So essentially, we format the date and time through ChatGPT, and then the next step is it takes the formatted date and time from ChatGPT and it searches my closer's calendar for the event that started closest to that date and time, and this gives us the prospect's name of who that call recording was with. And then the next step is that it changes the name of the file to the prospect's name and then automatically puts the date the call was taken. And now the files are automatically being uploaded, and automatically the name of the recording is being changed, where before my closer had to do this manually. So after every call, you would have to go into Google Drive and manually edit the name of each event, but now it just happens automatically, so he doesn't even have to think about it. Again, he can save his energy for higher leverage tasks like selling and follow-up and calling old leads, and it's just happening in the background. So I thought this automation was really cool, and it's a really cool workaround. I would definitely recommend implementing this for everyone. And then the next step is it sends basically a Slack alert inside of our channel saying, new sales call recording, the title of the call from the updated title change, and then also a link to the recording in Google Drive. Now, the reason we do this is, like I mentioned, every morning I meet with my closer, and one of the big things that we do during those meetings is review a lot of his sales calls on 2x speed. So, before I had to basically ask him, hey, is this uploaded to Google Drive? Can you pull it up? And he'd have to go find a specific call and pull it up. But now we have our morning meetings on Slack, so now all I have to do is open up this channel and I can see a link to every single different prospect's call, and then this way we can just pull it up right away on our meeting, and all of this is happening in the background, and then basically all of these entries are being saved in the Slack channel too. So this right here, it's really small, but this automation I just really love because it's super convenient. We basically found a way to not only record sales calls without alerting the prospect, but also still have them automatically automatically get uploaded to a Google Drive, have the title automatically change so it's organized, and then send it and store it in our Slack channel. So Zap number 12 is our Elite VA end of day form. So like I mentioned, we kind of have another recruitment agency called Elite VA, which is essentially how we recruit and train virtual assistants for all of our clients. And basically we have all of the VAs that we place inside of our clients' businesses. We have them all fill out an end of day form so that we can track all of their performance, but also collect data on which VAs and what niches are doing the best, and what the average appointment booking rate and warm lead rate is across the board. And then this allows us to not only become a data company, but also have a bird's eye view on how all of our clients' virtual assistant outbound campaigns are performing. So essentially, this Zap gets triggered every single time one of our clients' VAs fills out that form at the end of the day. And then it only continues if the VA generated at least one warm lead, booked at least one call, or their client, who they're working for, one of our clients, closed at least one of the deals from a call they booked. And then what it does is it sends us an alert in our Slack channel. And basically this is how we track wins of the virtual assistants, right? So a win would be generating warm leads, getting booked calls, or closed deals. And essentially, we can get, sent, basically at the end of the day, we can see, who the name of the VA, the client they're working for, what niche they were targeting, and then a description of their win. So, kind of day to day, we can see, what's happening in terms of the VAs that we place for our clients. And then the next one is all the VAs that we recruit, we add them to their own community inside of Discord, and we have a wins channel inside of that VA only community where all the other VAs can see the wins that the other VAs are having. So, we basically send a message in the Discord channel that they're all in, showing basically, again, kind of some of that same information. So it says new win posted, the name, the client name, the niche, and then the win description. So, this kind of hypes up the VAs. And, if a VA joins the Discord and they're just going through training, them seeing all these other VAs getting all these wins, it shows them, hey, they actually got a job through this recruitment company, but also kind of hypes them up and it gets them more excited to go through the training. So Zap number 13 is basically our Facebook group automation. So we just created a Facebook group very recently, so this automation is very new. We haven't, some of you guys even watching this have requested to join. We have about like 71 requests building up right now, and I'll kind of drop a little CTA to go ahead and join it. The reason we haven't really let many people in is because we're still creating basically a free course to go with the group, but that's going to be finished very soon. So if you do want to get access to that as soon as it drops, learn about more automations like this, cold emails, sales, etc. You can basically request to join this group in the description, and you'll basically get alerted as soon as that program/free course does drop. But essentially, we recently created this Facebook group, so we have an automation to go with it. And, the first step is basically a trigger whenever a new Facebook group member is approved by Group Collector. So we basically use this extension/software called Group Collector, and what it does is it connects to our Facebook group, and you'll notice it says Group Collector approve, right? It doesn't say approve, it says Group Collector approve for all of these different leads here, or people trying to join our group. So whenever we let someone into the group, this automation is going to be triggered, or we can create an automation through Group Connector that if someone answers all three of these questions, it will automatically add them to the group. And so essentially, whenever a new person gets allowed into our group, it triggers the automation. The first thing it does is it sends us a Slack alert with the prospect's name, what they put for the answers, right? So everyone who joins our group, we ask them the number one obstacle in their business, what their current offer is, and then what's the best email to send free training to. So essentially, we see all those answers, and if a lead's answers looks really high quality, then one of our growth specialists is going to immediately reach out to them. And to be honest with you, if you do join our group, one of our team members will reach out to you to basically ask you a couple questions, see what other training we could send you, and basically, this gives them an alert where every time someone does join the group, they can see that, and then they can basically reach out to them, see if they got access to the course, also ask them a couple other questions to see if there's any other training that we can send them. And then basically, this is the first step, and so this is going to get triggered for everyone who joins the group. But then there's a filter, and The rest of the automation only continues if a prospect gave their email, right? So the last question is basically asking for an email. So you'll see some people, they don't fill out the questions. So it only continues if they do include their email in that last question. So it basically only continues. And then, the next step is it sends that email to Reon Verifier to be verified. So, immediately if they do have an email, it's going to send it to a verification tool to automatically verify their email to make sure that it's valid. And then only if the prospect's email is verified is the Zap going to continue. So if it's verified, what it's going to do, it's going to create a contact inside of ActiveCampaign, which is our email marketing software, and it's going to add them to a campaign that automatically sends them the free training that they get for joining the group, and then also sends them a couple other resources in this pretty long email marketing auto-responding sequence. And the reason we verify their email is because if someone puts a non-valid email or something random there, we don't want them being put into our email marketing system, because then the email is going to bounce and it's going to hurt our sender's reputation. So this is essentially our new group join automation. This one's super cool. If you have a Facebook group, which you absolutely should, even if you plan on running ads, a Facebook group will really mitigate the CPA of your ads. If you have one, you should definitely set this up. So number 14 is our onboarding feedback form. So essentially every time we onboard a client, they're sent the onboarding email inside of ActiveCampaign, and we have an automation set up inside of ActiveCampaign where 14 days after the prospect gets sent the onboarding email, it sends them another email basically asking for feedback on the onboarding process and experience, and it gives them a feedback form that they can complete to give us feedback on what we can improve in terms of our onboarding process. Because we're always looking to improve our onboarding process and experience, so we literally ask every client what they liked, what they didn't like, what they think we should add, how they would rate it on a scale of 1 through 10, and we give them the option to fill out the form anonymously, because people tend to be a little bit more honest when they they don't know that their name is being shown, or they do know their name is being shown. So essentially we have a form for that, and every time that form is completed inside of Jotform, it's going to trigger this automation right here. It's basically going to send us those answers inside of Slack. So we're going to be able to see, we're going to get a notification when someone gives us feedback on our onboarding process. And then there's a question in the last part of the form that basically asks, like, hey, do you have any recommendations or things that we should add to improve our onboarding process or experience? And the rest of the Zap is only going to continue if they do fill out that part of the form. And if they do, it's then going to go ahead and create a task inside of our Asana to implement what that client suggestion was to add into our process. And again, this allows us to have a rapid feedback loop, but then also we make sure that that suggestion or something that they would like to be added into that onboarding process or experience actually gets completed. And so basically, create a task in Asana, basically with the title of, customer feedback, and then the date of when they submitted the form. And then the description will basically describe everything they said that they would recommend us adding or they would like to experience as a customer. And this allows us to rapidly improve that onboarding process, and it really streamlines that part of the things. So we're on Zap number 15, and I saved the best for last, and this is our new client onboarding Zap. And I believe this is the longest Zap, as you can see inside of our entire Zapier account. And this is what helps us really automate the majority of our onboarding process. So, we can onboard multiple clients every week without getting overwhelmed, and making sure that everything that needs to get done gets done. Okay, so essentially, the trigger of this Zap is when our main agreement, which is basically our contract, is signed inside of Panda Docs. And actually, the way that they get access to the Panda Docs is we basically, when our closer is about to enroll a client, he sends them a payment funnel, where they basically pay for our service, and then as soon as they pay, it redirects them to this page. It automatically says thank you and then their name, and it looks like I didn't put a capital J on the first form, so that's why I carried over like that. But it basically, gives them access to the contract, and so the contract is actually automated as well. All they do is put their email, first name, last name, company name here, click review document, and it's automatically going to add their name, their email, and their company name and the date to that contract automatically. So not only is, do we have the Zap, but the actual contract itself is automatically created. Basically, as soon as they pay, they get redirected to this page. And again, this makes it very easy to onboard a lot of clients, because I see a lot of agency owners, they're manually creating contracts, they're going over here, they're doing that. And if they were to try to scale like that, it would literally be impossible. So essentially, this, once they complete signing this document, and then they also click I've signed the document, and it'll take them to our onboarding form, which is basically the next step of the onboarding process. But the trigger to our onboarding Zap is once they've signed the contract. And the reason you want to do this instead of a payment or something else is because a client isn't really a client until they sign the actual contract. So this automation basically gives them access to a lot of the assets that our clients get. And we don't want them getting access to those assets unless they've signed the contract and officially became a client. So it's a good practice to gatekeep your automation, gatekeep your onboarding automation behind the contract as a trigger, instead of an onboarding form, or instead of the payment. Now there are other automations you'll want from your onboarding form, like the gift sending one, for example. But you want to basically gatekeep the majority of your assets behind the contract. So basically, this Zap gets triggered when a new contract is signed. It only continues if it's our main program contract. So like you saw, we have other contracts, like for our closers, for the NDAs, for our team members, and we don't want this very long automation getting triggered every time any contract is signed. So it basically filters everything out unless it is that main agreement. And the first thing it's going to do is going to go into the sales pipeline where that prospect will already be, because they've been automatically sent there as soon as they book the call, and it's automatically going to mark them as closed inside of the pipeline. And then that's also, it's going to mark them closed inside of our system as well as soon as that happens. And then it's basically going to add the client to a block list and instantly. And you might be wondering why we do this. And actually the reason we do this is because what the block list does is every time you upload leads to a cold email campaign, it automatically filters out the people on your block list. So, back when I was running a real estate agency, I accidentally sent cold emails to multiple of my clients. So, learning from my mistakes, now every time someone becomes a client, they automatically get added to our block list. So, every time we upload new leads, and instantly, if our client somehow is in that lead list, which believe me, it can happen, I'm speaking from experience here, they'll automatically get filtered out. And again, because if you have a cool client, they're not going to mind if you send them a cold email, but again, it's just not that professional. And because of that, I've added this step into the automation to eliminate that possibility from happening. The next step is we're going to get an alert in Slack basically saying the contract's been signed, who it's been signed by. The next step is it's going to create or update a contact in ActiveCampaign. So essentially, if they're already in our email marketing system, which is very possible, it's just going to update them in there and basically mark them as, it's going to tag them as a client in our email marketing database. Or if they're not in there already, it's going to add them as a contact and mark them as a client. And then the next step is it's going to add that contact that was just created or updated to the onboarding email automation. So this is an automation inside of ActiveCampaign, and the first thing it does is it removes them from any other marketing campaigns, right? Because someone who booked a call with us, they might have been on some other, maybe they opted into our group and they were on that automation. Maybe they opted into one of our funnels and they were on an automation. So inside of ActiveCampaign, once they get added to the onboarding automation in ActiveCampaign, it's automatically going to remove them from any other campaigns so that they stop receiving those emails that are trying to get them to book a call. And then basically it's also going to next send them the onboarding email, which is a pretty standard onboarding email, has everything that they need in there. Next, it's going to invite them to our school group, where basically the community where all our clients are, as well as the course content and the weekly calls. It's going to create a new project for that client inside of Asana, And this project is basically where we keep track of, because our service is delivered by multiple different people, and because of that, creating an Asana project allows us to keep track of where each person and assign different tasks for delivering the service to that client to different people inside of our company. And we can basically keep track of where we're at with each client, basically have a checklist for basically each of the roles and tasks that are needed to deliver good results. And we can also kind of keep a log of where that client is at, so we can also kind of track their progress. And this gives each individual client basically their own kind of entry inside of our system, so we can keep track of everything when it comes to service delivery. And you can do this through Asana. You can do it through ClickUp. I personally really like Asana, but you can also do it through ClickUp. I see some people do it with Notion. Notion just isn't very good with Zapier, to be honest, so I would recommend using Asana or ClickUp. And if you don't have either of those tools, it's really going to be hard to scale and really just manage a lot of clients and manage onboarding them. The next step is it's going to create a private channel in Slack. So basically all of our clients get access to myself and my team members in a private Slack channel. So it's automatically going to create that private Slack channel for us. And then it's automatically going to basically send a welcome message in that Slack channel, basically, telling them where to go if they need help based on certain things, also linking a bunch of other important links, basically just welcoming them to their Slack channel so that they don't feel like a stranger in their own home. And then, we give every single client basically a Google Drive. So it's going to automatically create that client's Google Drive folder, and it's going to be named after that client. It's going to immediately after give the client access to that Google Drive folder, so only us and the client can access it. And then it's basically going to start creating a lot of different assets that we give to all of our clients. So it's basically going to, and now we have a bunch of blank of these assets. We have a bunch of blank ones, and basically what it's doing is it's finding those blank ones and it's making a copy, but it's automatically adding our client's name to that document. So for example, it's basically, it creates their Google Drive folder. It's immediately going to create their sales tracker. Okay, so we give every single client a sales tracking sheet. It's immediately going to create that. And then it's going to create a tracking folder inside of their main folder, so a subfolder, and then it's going to move the sales tracker that was created for them into the tracking folder inside their main folder. And then next, it's going to create their projections tracker. So, we have all of our clients basically, track their projections week to week and month to month. And that's really one of the key habits and behaviors that really helps you scale. So we give them a projections tracking sheet to make it unreasonable that they don't do it. And basically it creates one for that client, adds it to the tracking sheet. Next, it creates the master database. So that's basically the database I showed you earlier that tracks, all the appointments, the revenue, the payments, the end of day forms, all that good stuff. Basically, we give one of those to each and every one of our clients, so it's automatically going to create one of those for them. It's going to move it to their tracking folder as well. Next, it's going to create their offer creation worksheet, which is something we have all our clients do. It's going to move it to that main folder. Next, it's going to create their IG outreach tracking sheet for them or their VA, and then it's going to move that to the tracking folder as well. Next, it's going to create their client's Facebook tracking sheet for them or their VA, or just so they can have it. A lot of clients really like the way we've structured our tracking sheets, and that's going to move it to the folder. And then finally, we have a document that is kind of custom to each client that we share our screen and walk them through during the onboarding call. And we write down a couple of important things, specifically reverse engineer their goal, etc. And this document is something we use on all our onboarding calls, but it is custom. So basically, it's going to find the template we've created for our onboarding document, and it's going to create one specifically for that client that automatically has their name in the document and in the name of the document, and then it's going to add it to their Google Drive folder, right? So that was obviously kind of a lot, but basically, everything here, most people, it's crazy. They're doing all these things manually, and especially once you start onboarding like 3 to 5 clients in a week, you do not want to be doing all of these things manually 5 times, or you're going to be literally spending like 3 days out of the week just doing it when you can automate it through Zapier, okay? So that's essentially, the final automation. Hopefully, you got value of this. Hopefully, it wasn't a little bit, too intense or too in depth or kind of too advanced. But again, I could not run my business without Zapier. And actually, if you kind of are thinking, hey, these automations are crazy, like these are cool, I want them, but it seems like way too much work or, technical knowledge to set up. Actually, for every single one of our clients at Lead Odyssey, we build them out all of these automations and more, and get on a one-on-one call with them and show them how to use it. So, if that's something you're maybe interested in, there will be a link below if you want to book a call and get a walkthrough of exactly what we can offer you.